Welcome once again, ladies and gents, to the On the Slab Horror Show with me, your host, Ian the Dynamo Kelly, joined as always by my left arm and my right arm, the G-Man, Greg Flanagan, and of course, Carl Kingo.
Yeah, how are we?
We are very well. We are very well. And today, it's Friday, lads. What does that mean?
Horror night. Horror night.
It's horror night. And guess what? Today's show, as you can tell by the beautiful little subtitles below, this is all going to be about the 1974 classic from Tobe Hooper, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in honor of the original. But with the original, we now today have the follow-on, which is dropped on Netflix, the latest Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which a lot of you young cats and, are probably saying to yourself, well, I don't really know much about the original. It didn't really look great. It's not high definition. Well, guess what? This is the follow-on from the original. So we're going to tell you all about how you need to watch this film before you watch the one that's just dropped on Netflix today. But first and foremost, let's welcome the boys. Carl, how are we doing?
All good, brother. How's tricks?
All good, my man. Greg?
What's up, homies?
Looking forward to this one. This has kind of been, this has been a film, a movie, a picture, if you will, that has kind of been talked about for a while that we were going to do. And what an opportune time to do it, dropping it on the day that the follow-up, the actual follow-up releases.
Yeah. Not one of the 15 other parts that they
not one of the not one of the 15 other parts. And in particular, like last week, They Live was my baby. Today, this is Carl's baby. Probably, absolutely. I would imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but probably your favorite of all time, right?
Yeah, it's this and American Werewolf as a very, very... American Werewolf was just probably under a shade, below this. But this film, for me, yeah, I love it. I could watch this every single fucking day. I really could,
Yeah. You look like you could be in it too today. You're ready for it. You're ready for it.
I mean, this is almost a perfect movie in terms of atmosphere, horrible fucking weather. I'd say that they were filming in horrible film locations. But there's a scene in this that we'll get to later that just turns me off this movie.
Yeah, we've heard more than enough about it on the chat group, haven't we?
This movie I love this movie up until one point, and then I'm just kind of like, oh, okay.
Could you not just give it a pass because it's such a classic now?
I mean that there's certain movies when I've been in where there's parts of a movie that turn me off and I won't watch them again. This one I will watch.
Yeah.
I get on with it, but as high as people rate it, I have it a little lower because of that.
Well, let's actually look at that, right? Because I think what people thought the Blair Witch did, the Blair Witch movie, of course, Blair Witch Project, should I say? This was the original of its kind in the sense 1974, where it was very much so marketed on pretty much no budget. Carl and Greg, of course, Greg is the facts man, but Carl knows this movie inside out. So today I'm going to be your kind of a host, but the knowledge lies within the boys. But look, I remember being terrified by this movie too. Like, I watched it at probably too young an age, to be fair. Because
you watch everything at too young an age.
He does.
I definitely do. I definitely did. That's half what's wrong with me, or what's right with me, maybe.
That's what's right with you.
Yeah, exactly what's right with me. But the point I was going to make there was this is the original kind of Blair Witch Project movie in the sense that it was marketed as being based on true events.
Yeah.
And also the fact that the director, producer, Toby, was fucking with them in the sense that he knew the heat was getting to them and using that to his advantage to make the acting so good. Because Carol, we'll start with you because you pretty much know the history of this film inside and out, because the actors in this, they weren't well-known actors. It was pretty much almost like a student movie, right?
That's exactly what it was. And it was a college, they were college students, and basically that's where he got Gunnar Hansen,
Yeah.
you know, who of course played the iconic Leatherface.
Yeah.
But what again, like, just to take you back, I mean, what I love about it, and let's set the stage. Like you said, it's 1974. It's in the middle of summer in Texas, one of the hottest places probably in the States. Yeah, absolutely. And they've no money. They little or no money. So they had to, you know, come up with ways to make things. And boy, Jesus, did they make it. Like, when you think about it, I know probably hasn't aged the way a classic should, but to me, it's aged perfectly.
I wouldn't agree with that now. I think it aged very well.
Me neither. I think that organic, because it's Greg. I'll let you go ahead there.
Well, I suppose just before you go on, well, you're taking me wrong probably. Remember what I said wrong there. For today's tastes, maybe, you know, I still think it's amazing. I still think it looks beautiful. I think it's I think that's beautiful. And as I said, it's the kind of film where nobody wins. You know, it's quite perfect.
Better equipment would have actually hindered this movie, and I think that's probably what Greg was the point that he was going to get onto there.
Yeah, it's rough, it's grainy, it's dark, and it's dull, and it's just all around tense.
Yeah.
Would you dare say that it's kind of more, because it does have that documentary feel? Because I think the way they marketed it in being based on true events, it felt like you were actually there with them rather than.
There is parts of it, like when you see them at the start where they're in the van and they pick up the brother. That sets it up like a documentary, and then it kind of knocks back to film, and then goes back to a documentary of parts, and it's
almost like a mix of found footage and movie, isn't it?
Yeah, to an extent.
Like that,
There's even scenes where you see her running, and you can see the camera bouncing from side to side because obviously they were on the back of a truck or whatever.
You feel like you're with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like he done a hell of a job with it. But like as you were saying there, with being in Texas, 7 people on this movie ended up in hospital with heat and sunstroke.
Yeah,
the movie working conditions were unworkable at times.
Inhumane. Yeah,
they'd have to start at like 5 a.m. at sunrise and stop for a couple hours a day, like, because it was just too hot. You can understand why the crew were getting the way they were.
Oh yeah, and I think that makes me more appreciative of the effort that they made, knowing what they went through to get to that stage.
Put their bodies on the line for it, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that, I mean, I don't think they even got paid properly, the actors in the end. So, you know, because the film only started making kind of money later on.
Yeah.
Because I do know, I think it was I think some film company that were run by the mob, I think, owned it.
Vortex.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, they weren't going to make money on that, you know. So it's only in later life, you know, through DVDs and Blu-rays and re-releases and all that kind of stuff, where it's come full circle and it's got its cult following, really.
Well, put a bit of context on this. It was produced for less than $140,000, and even with inflation, which it shows you inflation is crazy today. Even with inflation, that's still, for a movie of its kind, and you know, and for the legend that it has, is still only $700,000 in today's money.
Wow.
So
it's little to nothing, but then you look at it, the cast were nobodies.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Gunnar Hansen obviously went on to be the biggest of them, but like he wasn't even originally cast. So they wouldn't mention names as to who the original person that was cast was, but he lasted one day on film. And he got absolutely hammered, and they told him to fuck off.
Here, Greg, you're the stats man. How important do you think? Actually, I'll put this question to both of you, actually, because in a world, I have to do it every week. I said I'd do it. Like, honestly, though, all joking aside, in a world where, like, you know, it's very hard to shock people other than, I don't know, maybe someone kicking a cat or something. You know, it's very hard to shock people with movies these days and all, like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through my notes here, and it's kind of like in the 1990s, isn't it, where artists that had any kind of cuss words in their songs had the parental advisory sticker on their, you know, on their CD or their CD or their tape, and that was like a blessing in disguise. I remember hearing Nikki Sixx, actually, from Motley Crue, for all you rockers out there, saying when the record executive came up to him and said, "Oh man, we have to put a parental advisory. They're saying they want to put a parental advisory sticker on your CD," and he goes, "Awesome."
Yeah, it's like a badge of honor, yeah.
Because the kid is going to buy that, right? Because I mean, I was that kid in the 90s that went seeking things that had parental advisory on it. So the fact that it was banned in so many countries, it was kind of like the Slipknot effect. You know what I mean? People wanted to see it more because it had this little mystique over it. And numerous theaters stopped showing the film because of complaints of the violence. And it drew, obviously, reception was whatever, but it grossed over 30 million at the domestic box office.
Close to 31, yeah.
Yeah, and then roughly over 150.8 as of 2019 is what I got from Wikipedia. I'm not going to lie.
That's unreal, though, isn't it? When you think about it.
Wow.
100,000 times the payback, is it?
Yeah. That must be some sort of record.
It would be. I think so.
The one thing there is, do you want to know where he got the idea for this movie?
Go for it.
From Christmas shopping. You know how people get insane?
Oh,
He also pitched the idea to be a PG movie. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work.
Oh, me either.
I'd imagine it would be, you won't see anything other than him maybe taking somebody, but you wouldn't see any death scenes or thing. But he pitched it to be a PG movie originally.
So it sounds like a lad with an ambition and a lot of dreams, Carl, to be a movie maker, and he just threw a lot of shit at the wall on this one.
Yeah.
I just hope something would stick. But
that's it. He was pinning all his hopes on this one. He really was, you know, because he was a struggling student. They liked them all. They were all in film college, and
in death up their eyeballs, probably with those students.
So he had to just give it a shot with this, and I think to a point it made it. Like I say, initially it didn't do anything for him because he was in with the wrong people. But I still think, he was able to live off, I suppose, his reputation then, really. Yeah. With future films and stuff, you know.
He didn't do very much. I know he done a couple other ones, really, but like this will be the one he will always be known for.
Yeah.
Nothing else was nearly as big as this.
No. So he wasn't like, he didn't kind of take that. He probably, you know, what's the old saying from Marvin Hagler? When you're struggling when you're a struggling boxer, as he said, but when you're a struggling athlete and you're waking up at 5 a.m. to get there, it's easy. But when you're lying in silk pajamas, not so much, you know. So he definitely made his cut, and he's probably living very, very comfortably. Quick one. On this, obviously, Greg, you brought up a few. You're the stats man. Obviously, the Ed Gein shows his face here on this one. This and Psycho, and this and Psycho, and of course Silence of the Lambs. They're the three kind of movies that people always say were like heavily influenced by the story of Ed Gein, because it is one of the most, even though he didn't necessarily, not that there should be a stat count on how many people you kill to make it a great serial killer, but for this guy in Plainfield, who we will do a show on one day, you know, it's mad. You can, like, I think, you know, knowing as much as I do about Ed Gein, because I was just always enthralled by it, scared by it, by how evil this man could be. You know what I mean? Not a hero in any way, shape, or form, but just like, wow, how can you do this? Making the whole furniture making out of, you know, human, you know, anatomy and bones and stuff like that. That's it's heavily influential in this movie, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's very strange when you see somebody, like, hearing stories like that in real life.
Yes.
about being a serial killer and killing 50, 60 people or whatever, but like actually mangling bodies to make stuff.
And wearing their skin. Yeah.
Well,
And eating your breakfast out of their skulls and all.
Yeah. Lampshades out of their fucking
suppose
bones.
The milk will come out the eyeballs, but you'd be grand.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know about
The
you
top
boys.
part
But
of
see
the skull. Top part.
yeah, that kind of stuff to me. Well, I think it's morbid. It's fascinating, though.
Oh, yeah,
No.
100%. 100%.
You know, I'm fascinated, and I'm actually fascinated. Not that I'm into before you say that.
No, it's the psychology of it.
I'm fascinated by cannibalism. You know, but I don't want to eat people. Don't get me wrong. But like that whole thing of cannibalism, and you know the way people think it gives them a sense of power, and like they consume the other people's spirit and all that kind of stuff.
All the South American jungle people and whatnot.
I find it fascinating.
It's a very interesting subject, just purely on that, because I mean, it all boils down to you know, the psychology of it. You know what I mean? What you know, where's these people's minds? Like, what is it? What do they think that they're benefiting from? Like, is it a superior thing? More than likely, I suppose.
I think that's there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're right.
I think they're the kind of even movies that you see people get more creeped out about is when you bring cannibalism into it. It's when people get more uncomfortable.
Because it can happen. Because it can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and has happened. Yeah.
And still probably is happening somewhere.
I know. I mean, like, not to steer away from, you know, the movie itself, but I mean, when we look like probably the most notorious cannibal of all, obviously Jeffrey Dahmer, you know.
Yeah.
It's, you know, this is why this movie is so intriguing, and it does tie into the likes of Jeffrey Dahmer and people like Ed Gein, because this is giving you like an indication of how crazy some people can be. But in 1974, people weren't ready for it. And do you think maybe that this movie is a kind of an enlightening, almost awakening to the post hippie free love people of the 60s, bringing us into the 70s and showing them that true evil does actually exist, believe it or not. And it actually happened in 1950s to 1955, maybe, in Plainfield, in a tiny little, you know, bumfuck town somewhere in the middle of the States, where this guy literally took a load of women and wore their skin at night, banging pots and pans, and literally ate his cereal, as Greg mentioned, out of the top part of their skulls, and, you know, made nipple belts and stuff like that. So
weird.
He's almost shown us the dark side of humanity in this movie, realistically, rather than just making it a gore movie for the sake of being a gore movie. No,
I think this was more so one of the first slasher movies that was sort of based off something that really made it big.
Sure. True events, like, yeah.
Would you agree?
I would 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like it changed. Like, I know I'll always say Nightmare on Elm Street changed the slasher game, but this to an extent, obviously dramatized by Hollywood and whatnot, but it was a true story based on it.
Well, what I loved about the way that Hooper went about this, I mean, and again, it's what, like, you know, it was banned for the amount of violence, but there was barely any blood. That's the gas thing. There was barely any blood shown in the killings. And the killings, I mean, the way Leatherface puts your woman on that hook, that's just
there's no love loss, is there?
No.
It's just get up there.
It's dumb. And the smack of the hammer.
That's the
sound effects
everyone remembers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hammer to the back of the head.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, there's not a hell of a lot of absolute gore, but it's implied, you know, or when he's chopping up one of the lads on the slab. You see him. You just see it zooming in on Leatherface's face with the chainsaw. You can hear the chainsaw going. You can hear something getting cut. I think that's much more effective than showing him splashing someone up with a fucking.
Well, it leaves it to the power of the human mind, doesn't it? Like, essentially.
Yeah, and that's worse.
Yeah.
I'm generally kind of sick of torture porn.
Yeah.
Horror.
You've seen it
like,
once, you've seen it all, haven't you? You know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
well, and good watching Hostel or watching Saw, and then you're just like, how is there 7 or 8 of these? Like,
I know. But
Saw's not too bad because the story's good. Hostel needed 1, and that was it.
the first one was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was.
the first one is a good
But,
movie. Yeah.
mm.
But again, it's the same thing over and over. It's just how many different ways can we try and creep people out from people killing people?
Well, you're appeasing to like the kind of weirdos out there nowadays. We know that we're a very, very influential society. I mean, all we need to do is look in our own country at, you know, the young lads going around trying to be, you know, actors from Love, Hate, and people like that. You know what I mean? So you're kind of appealing to a lot of those as well, and that's why there's a genre. So, like, I mean, I think people that just torture porn is their bag and that's what they love. I think you need to check those people's laptops. Just saying. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know.
I also think there's a big reliance on wanting people to cheer for the villain.
Yes.
In movie in general.
Yeah. All
the
new
anti-hero,
movies are like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like,
So
Freddy Krueger is obviously the biggest one of them.
Yeah.
That he became the icon.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I mean, in this film, I mean, you're not exactly expected to cheer for Leatherface, but you can see that he has mental issues, mental health problems, and he has been, you know, bullied and abused by his family. Now, again, it's not to take away what he's doing. It's, you know, he's just basically an instrument of destruction. An instrument of destruction that, you know, doesn't know what's going on, is afraid, from what we've been told. He's afraid of what's happening. He doesn't know what's going on. All these people are coming into his house and around his house, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's told to kill this person, to chop up that person, you know. So it goes to show you how somebody who has mental issues can be manipulated as well to do wrong things.
It's funny that you bring up the mental issues there. So Gunnar Hansen actually stayed in a mental institution to get ready for this after being taken on. He spent 2 weeks studying mentally ill people and how they move and how their body reacts to things and whatnot. So he definitely put the work in after being not cast and then cast. Do you know what I mean?
And I mean, what I love about him is he always loved the fact that he was Leatherface. He took, like, he didn't disown that role. He never disowned the franchise. Even with the crappy ones that followed, he was still happy to be part of the Texas Chainsaw family. You know,
I'm very happy he didn't put his name to the rest of them though.
Yes, although he was in one of them. He was in one of them in a cameo.
He comes back as Boss Sawyer in the 2013 one.
Yeah, which is fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Like you see that with Tom Savini in certain films. Like,
well, he's still got to get paid. You know what I mean? Also,
we done from we did Dawn of the Dead there a couple of weeks ago, and Tom Savini obviously in the first one, and then he's in a cameo in the second one.
Yeah.
And the remake. Do you know what I mean? So it was great to see him back in.
Little nods are good. Yeah, little nods are good, yeah.
But I'm glad he didn't try and portray what they brought Leatherface to. Like, I think they tried to, I know it was before Freddy Krueger as well at times, but in the newer ones, that's what they tried to make it. They tried to make him, like even the one there with Alexander Daddario, they brought him in and then they tried to make him lovable because he's just protecting his family. That's not what we came here to see. Like,
no, or the initial remakes, like they made him just this big, huge hulking brute that there was no real
emotions.
No, but as well as that, like you wouldn't tell he had mental issues. You know, you couldn't. He was just like a monster. Like, you know.
I just wanted to touch on a point that you made there as well, because I think it's very, very apropos. Because isn't that actually a little bit of genius on Cooper's part, in the sense that what he did here is that he's left it up to the audience, because unfortunately us horror fans tend to get kind of pigeonholed as like not really narrative driven and not really, you know, because we're not into period dramas and stuff like that, you know, for all these nonsense out there that just like fucking, you know, Keira Knightley acting fucking nonsensically in a you know, in a Victorian fucking house with absolutely zero charisma whatsoever. And that's not a shot on Keira Knightley, but all those Pride and Prejudice stuff, like you go online and you look at the ratings that those movies have, and they're absolutely shocking movies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're movies made to win Oscars.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, for all of these pretentious fuckholes out there that, shop in, certain places only. We don't hang around the common people. Well, I got news for you people. Rant incoming. This horror in particular, and the reason I'm gonna rant on this one is purely because of the point that Carl made. This horror in particular is actually a very, very prevalent in the world of mental health, now that you boys have been talking about it, because it is a crazy family, right? It is a crazy family that are enticing this guy to do what they want. He quite clearly has to cover up his face, which shows that he has image issues, which is very prevalent today, ladies and gentlemen. No,
Big time. Yeah.
And he's not made out to be the good guy, but he's not made out to be the bad guy. And I think what Cooper does in this one is that he throws it out there into the ether and lets you, the viewer, decide. So you can see the dark side of this guy when he opens that fucking sliding door, which, by the way, terrible this kid, so aggressively, boom, hammer over the head, pulls him in, and then closes the door, and you're like, what in the name of good Jesus did I just see?
Yeah.
And then
it'd be a sharp shock to the system seeing that, and for the first time, and in the cinema, wouldn't it?
Especially at 12 years of age, when you're not meant to watch it. Not meant to watch it.
I'll give you another point there.
Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I'm going to pass it over to you there, Greg. But you see the point I'm making? He threw it out there into the ether, and he allowed society that actually wanted to view this movie. So don't tell me that horror doesn't have narrative and it's just all about blood and guts. Because if you're going to pigeonhole all horror based on those movies that you've just mentioned there, as in Saw, as in, what was the other one? Hostel, and all these kind of torture porn movies. Yeah, us true horror fans aren't into that either. So there we go.
There's the man himself.
There's the man himself.
Just as you brought up cinema there, right? So 1974, October 1st, this comes out, right?
Rachel's birthday.
Ed Neal.
Not then.
Ed. I was going to say she's not that old. Carl might be.
Up you, I'm not.
Ed Neal, who played the brother. Yeah, the fellow with the Port Weinstein.
Yeah.
So for the first 2 weeks of this movie coming out, he bought tickets to the cinema, just went in and was sitting beside people. And that opening scene when he's sitting in the truck and it zooms in on his face, he just tipped them on the shoulder and started staring at them.
Love it.
No, they just appear at random cinemas in Texas.
Brilliant.
That is awesome, man.
Yeah, that's one way of building up a movie, then, isn't it?
Yeah. But could you imagine if they done something like that?
Out of the person next to you.
If they done something like that now, though, it would be spoiled because everyone knows everything.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're seeking for knowledge, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, I think the real problem, lads, that we have now, it goes for pro wrestling, it goes for movies, it goes for any sort of entertainment. Oh, well, it's not real. It's not real. People, this is the problem. I said it last week. These are the problem. People have lost the ability to suspend belief. Suspending disbelief is actually the only way that you can enjoy any type of entertainment. That's a good point, Greg.
I mean, I'm not going to the cinema to watch a horror movie and be like, oh, well, this could actually happen, and you've got a guy who's been shot 56 times and he's still walking you down.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
I'm going to the cinema to enjoy the film.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it be fucking Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, whether it was Marley and Me or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I go to the cinema to watch the film. I know I prefer watching films in the cinema because I won't use my phone.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a fucker for watching something at home. And most of the time I've seen it, so I'll just be sitting on my phone and everything. Now I've gotten better at watching new films and putting my phone away and watching it and letting it run. But you need when you go to the cinema, switch everything off.
I'm an expert at this not consuming my life anymore, I have to say. And it's I tell you, lads, it's freedom when you do, because like literally because I've noticed myself, and I made a little deal with myself. Like if I count when I'm watching a video on Twitter or something like that, I count to 20, and if I'm on it longer than 20 seconds, I go right, boom, off. You know what I mean? Unless it's something you need to see, you know what I mean? But if I've made a commitment to watch a show, I'm watching the show, or I'm watching, you know what I mean? And it's, look, everyone's different. I get it, but it is an easy case. We're at a point in time now, you know, where the world is at its lowest in terms of attention span. You know what I mean? And I think this movie, like, I think one of the reasons, lads, we do those old movies and the throwbacks that we do, which we are going to get back to.
Yeah.
And this one is an old movie now. You know what I mean? It's 48 years of age. It's 48 years old.
Apart from the 20s and 30s, is this the oldest movie we've done?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, 48 years of age. Yeah, because that was 1974. I was born in 1984, so it's 48. Yeah.
And it's aging well.
Oh, like a fine wine. Like, you know.
Do you know, though, that's what we were saying earlier. Like, the camera work in this makes it gritty and dark, and you can just tell it's not a very nice place to be. Like,
you know what's a great part? You know what's a great part? You know what's a great part when Leatherface just arrives up with this chainsaw and kills your man in the wheelchair, and it's just like he comes right up in front of the camera. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, you know.
Yeah, that's at the back. They're in the back of the wall, aren't
they? Yeah. Brilliant.
The impact of that scene, actually. Yeah.
You know, I will say, like, that one was good. The way they done that in the 2003 one was very good. How they took out the wheelchair where they hung him up on the light, and then they go up that way. But then again, that was moved too much towards trying to shock people, where no one expected the guy in the wheelchair to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're taking that name and you're making it, you're trying to modernize it with the kind of thing that you people expect. I personally don't get on board with that. You know.
No, me neither. I mean, 2003 was a shit year for me anyway, because like that's when I done my back, as you know. So fuck that year in general.
I don't know. No, I like the way they done that one.
I just think with the naughties again. I think when you compare these movies, like this one from 1974, like I found Naughty's horror was quite, you know, it was quite
weak,
narrativeless. You know what I mean? Like there was some good stuff in there. There's some great movies. Like as I said, we covered what was your movie, Greg? We covered there a while ago. Oh god damn it. Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, but again, there's a nice feel about it. It's clean and wholesome at times, and then you're waiting for the darkness. So I do appreciate, you know, good, clean, you know, camera work and stuff like that as well. And that is one of the better ones. But you understand what I mean? A lot of those movies that came out, they just used the horror genre to make money rather.
Yeah, it's just piggybacked off the name.
Exactly.
It's like when you look at it, as it says here, the camera in this makes it look like a horrible place to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you take the likes of, say, even for instance, I like Wrong Turn. That's set in the Appalachian woods, and it looks like an unreal place to go for a walk.
Yes.
I mean, it's the way the camera's done differently now.
That's a great.
Like, even then, that was 2003 as well, actually.
Yeah.
But like. That would have been probably a standard definition camera at that time, maybe high definition.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I mean, now you have 4K cameras or 8K or whatever they are. So, I mean, if you try to film this now, Texas would look a whole lot better than it does in that movie.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to. That's the thing.
Well, essentially, it's like what I think what a lot of producers nowadays, and it's essentially producers and some directors, because producers have to kind of make sure that it looks all sexy for the Hollywood bigwigs. You know what I mean? Like they're casting couch victims, and it's kind of it's kind of one of those things where you're going, right, well, it's all well and good having everything looking shiny and neat. But it's like having a house with no foundation. You know what I mean? It's going to cave in eventually. You know, I used one today, which I'm proud of. It's like painting up the outside of a house and making it look shiny and new, and it really looks nice and it's packaged nice. But then everything's broken inside, so there's nothing really for anyone to find. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem with a lot of the Naughty's movies that came out. You know, this was the genre that, you know, literally gave us all the cheap rip-offs of all the classic J horrors that came out. Like that was
Absolutely.
really where they ripped off all
The
the J
Ring
horrors.
and The Grudge and all, yeah.
Yeah, you know, Ju-on and The Grudge and The Ring, and you were like, listen, you really want to see Ringu? Yeah, come back to me if you want to be scared, bitch. You know, because that's.
Yeah.
But
even what was it? Was it Wreck and
yes,
what was the American
Wreck.
one? Quarantine.
And Wreck
Oh,
2
yeah,
is
yeah.
unbelievable too. But that's it. But this is why I go. This is why I'm bringing this stuff up to keep it on point. Is because the atmosphere, which is Carl's word, of this movie is so fucking beautiful,
So
and
thick.
it's terrifying. Like you're there with them. Like Greg, you mentioned the camera work. You're there with them. You're putting yourself in that position, and it's the classic mindset, mind fuck horror of its time, where even today, if no one's ever seen it before, you put yourself in that position and go, fuck, what would I do in that position?
Yeah.
That's how you know you're onto a winner.
Let me tell you how I feel before we move on about like every time I watch this film, this is the one film that I fully invest myself into.
You get full erection. You get full.
Well, yeah, right. So let's say you're watching when Leatherface is doing that thing with his hands. This is just an example.
Yes.
So, and then it moves on to another shot. I'm thinking to myself, what's he gonna do? What's he doing after that? I'm imagining the whole of that universe. What's going on? If someone runs out a door, what's going on in the background afterwards? Like, you know, it's just I love it.
All the lads are cleaning up.
in terms of the story in the universe,
I know, yeah.
You know, that's how invested I am in that film. You know.
Do you think that lends itself to the point that you made earlier, Carl? Then that what we're looking there when he's doing that is he's actually having a battle within his head. He's the only human person in the house. That's
quite possibly,
it's like something in his head is telling him. One part of the brain is saying what you're doing is wrong, but he doesn't know how to articulate that to himself.
Essentially, he's the only innocent person in the house in a way.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
If that went theoretically, if he was caught and he went to court, there's no way that he'd
be criminally insane.
Now he'd be put straight in an insane asylum, and that's it.
Yeah. Craig,
Gunnar done a great job. This is probably the second best performance from a slasher, and I'd say that because he only done one of them.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Yeah.
Obviously, Robert Englund done the best of them because he went on to do 57 films.
103.
But Gunnar Hansen's performance in this was phenomenal.
Tell us about the scene that you don't like. We have to bring that up right now. I think that was the best point.
I was actually going to bring it up there when you were talking about, obviously, when he's having the battle and whatnot. So I get to the point where the infamous scene in this movie is the dinner scene. Like everyone remembers that the hammer.
Oh, right? I love it.
The two instances happen about 6 or 7 minutes apart in this movie. It's where you see the granddad. For me, so he's dead, and he's skin and bone up in the wheelchair in the room upstairs when she burst through the window. And you're like, all right, okay, they've just kept the family there and they're dead, fine, or they stuffed them and whatever. And then you get the dinner scene, and next thing you know, they bring the granddad in, and he starts sucking on her finger, and it's bleeding. And he comes back to life, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
It's not like he did a dance break, you know.
Maybe he wasn't dead, he was sleeping, no?
The man was about 4,000 years of age.
5,000, get it right, but he was still sleeping.
This is what not ruins it for me, but
knocks it down a bit.
Yeah.
You not realise, Greg? Did you not get the memo there? You were meant to be research, Greg. That was the prequel to The Mummy Returns, no?
What do you mean the prequel? That was the prequel to the prequel.
Prequel to the prequel before the prequel. Yeah.
It's that scene alone. Like everyone loves that scene, and I love it right up until that point.
Yeah.
And then I'm just kind of like it wasn't necessary at all. Whatever if they bring him in and he's dead, or have him old but not fucking skeleton old sitting in a room by himself. Do you know what I mean? It's just the fact that he comes back to life, and you're like, what? I know.
You're allowed to nitpick on these type of films. You're allowed to get.
But it's not even that. It's not even nitpicking. I can understand if the movie was going that way. Do you know what I mean? But this is just a guy killing people, fine, and his family are fucked up. It doesn't explain where you can either bring someone back from the dead, or they're about 200 years of age. You know what I mean?
So maybe that's where the whole kind of spiritual thing about cannibalism comes in. Maybe it gives him his power.
Potentially.
And that's the way I look at it, and that way it wouldn't spoil any aspect of it for me. It'd be like the one film that I would say, right, what way could I make this okay for me? There you go.
But yeah, you could look at it that way. That's fine if you believe in that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I know some people do, and whatever. I'm not gonna knock anyone's thing. That's the only thing that I don't like about this movie.
But then again,
other than that,
this movie though. But then again, like, doesn't that lend itself then where we could kind of nitpick, you know, the Scream franchises and even a new Scream movie where, you know,
everyone has their opinions
to death, and like it's broad daylight, and people are going, well, who's this lad who's stabbing me neighbor across the road a million times, and he's still there, and like, what's the story? Do you know what I mean? So again, I think it goes back to suspending disbelief, doesn't it?
Exactly. I can understand where Greg's coming from.
Oh, 100%. Me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
But I personally choose to not factor that into my feelings on the film. And that's because
it is what it is. I won't turn it off if it's on.
Yeah.
Where there are movies that have scenes in it that I don't like, and I just won't watch them because I know they're in it.
Yeah.
You're better off staying on my train, Greg. You know, like when you know that those people that you like, they may have done something, you know, not too wrong, obviously, but you know, they may have, like, you know, possibly, I don't know, robbed someone's missus, or, you know, you're like, that's morally wrong.
Did a Nazi salute.
You know, oh well, no, I don't know about that one. You know,
that one might get you in trouble
if they done something, you know, just a little bit. But you're like, well, stay on my train. It's all right. You still have a ticket on my train. You know.
Other than that, like, as it says, I know I brought back up the 2003 one. The ending in this is far superior to the ending in the 2003 one.
Timeless.
Like, I know they nearly tried to recast it the same in the 2003 one, but like, as good a job as Andrew Berezovsky did in 2003, like, he chops his arm off and he's still running, carrying a fucking chainsaw with one arm. You know what I mean? They over dramatized that one.
Yeah.
Where I suppose that's Michael Bay, and what can you expect?
Well, they made him out to be a monster. They made him out to be a monster, whereas quite clearly they made, you know, Cooper made this guy out to be a human with issues, and there's all subliminal messages within that, like, character.
The story of this one, the way this one's done, is better, I think, because of the scene thing. Like, I like the way the 2003 one went, where they just went away from that. Like, this is probably one of the ones where you have the original and the remake that I'd hold quite close to each other.
Yeah.
Not for me. Not even a fucking, you know, I wouldn't give 2003 the, you know, the last drip of my piss compared to this one personally. But I understand that's why we do these shows, because, you know what I mean? It's
the beauty of opinion, huh? The beauty of opinion.
Oh, absolutely. But I see where Greg's coming from. I see where Greg's coming from in terms of what he likes, though. You know what I mean? That's not a knock on you, Greg. It's just, but that's the great thing about it, you know, because we can have these chats, and this is why, you know, we need people to fucking like and subscribe to our show, because you could be disagreeing with me right now, telling me to piss off, and I love it. Let me know.
He loves an L discussion, don't you?
Oh,
an old chinwag.
But this is why we do it, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, because, like, I'm personally with Carl on this. Maybe it is that we're just slightly older than you, Greg. I don't know, but
well, it's not even that. It's, as I said, it's literally for that one scene. Other than that, the movie is great.
Oh, listen, I can see why. I mean, look, I've watched that. I watched this movie not as many times as Carl, but I've definitely watched it a lot. And I've watched it with a lot of different type of people and a lot of different personalities. Like, you know, my brother, Greg, I watched it with my brother, Joe, and he had the same, you know, opinion as you did with that.
It just doesn't make sense to him.
Yeah, he was kind of like, what the fuck is that? Like, and I was you know, in my head, I didn't really have the answers, so I was like,
either does walk around with his skin on his face makes sense. Either though.
There's only one person. There is only one person that has the answer to that, and Toby was not going to tell anybody.
Well, he's dead now, so
that's what I mean. He's not going to tell anybody. But I think that's one of those things he took. I'd say he was questioned on that quite a bit as to what that was.
I would imagine.
I don't think he ever gave an explanation to it.
No, he didn't.
I would imagine. I would imagine. But
I am very interested to hear everyone's slabs.
Yeah, well.
I'll know it's a 5 for me, 5 slabbing me for me. I don't take into account what Greg does. And again, no knock on your opinion, Greg. It's not. It's just difference of opinions. It's the one film that fully engrosses me every time. Every time I watch it, no matter how many times I've seen it, no matter what I know what's coming up, the chainsaw dance at the end is just so iconic. It's
perfect, isn't it?
It's iconic.
And she looks genuinely terrified in the back of that pickup.
Yeah, she's destroyed.
Well, I suppose Gunnar Hansen did cut her in the making of this as well.
Yeah. So, but you could, her reaction.
You couldn't make it today.
No. But I
don't care who you get in.
To me, it's a 5. There you go.
So the Democrat.
You can send that to me on Revolut there, will you?
Here's your Texas Chainsaw Massacre 5. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to. I'll just give a little bit of context as to why I'm going to give it what I give it. For me. Like I say, watching everyone in the world now knows the stories of me watching these movies with my granny or coming out here and watching them on my own. This particular one, right? I told you with the original Halloween, I watched that with my cousin in the kitchen while all the adults are in there, so you feel safe. You know what I mean? You feel safe because all you have to do is slide the door open. When you're lying,
they're still there.
Yeah, like when you're lying in bed on your own and you kind of get your telly for the first time. Like as I said, I was like 12. It couldn't, it definitely wasn't 13. Like I was definitely around 11 or 12 watching this, and it was on again, Channel 4. Shout out to Channel 4. What a fucking! I
think they're the only channel that ever show it.
Oh, unbelievable, man! And they did back in the day. They were the kind of rebel channel that would just say "fuck you," you know what I mean? We're going to show
them and BBC too.
But I remember it was a Friday or a Saturday night because I'd come out here to English at the weekends, right? And like you all know, but this was on a Friday or Saturday night where I was particularly. I must have had a load of. Obviously, I was 11, so it was the Coca-Cola drink, not Coke. You know, and I remember kind of being hyper and watching, flicking around, and it was like, the late horror movie, and they were always on at like 9 or 12. You know what I mean? They'd always show.
As soon as the watershed was over.
100%. And I remember this was on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I remember watching it, lads. Like from the very first few scenes where you're watching this group of idiots going around in their little camper van, and even to the point where your man comes in and fucking slices your man's cheek, and then laughing. I was like, what am I watching? But I was just so intrigued by it that it still has a place in my head. Like I'm actually bringing the reason I tell this story is to purely give context, because I actually go back to that time. Because I think we can all do that, you know what I mean? It brings us back to a time where we were. And I remember going, right, this is a different level of horror than I've ever seen. And I was still of the belief at that time, because if I was 11 or 12, you're talking about 1995 or 1996, I was still of the belief that this was based on true events. There was no internet back then, you know what I mean? There's no mobile phones. And
I think that's how the likes of, as you said earlier, Blair Witch and all worked perfectly, because there was no internet to say this didn't happen.
Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? All you got was the network that they would pay, like Blair Witch's point of view, they would pay like Sky One at the time on the breakfast, or the big breakfast. I remember seeing the producers and the directors of that particular movie on 1999, wasn't it?
Eduardo Sanchez.
Yeah, on the Big Breakfast, saying how they went and studied these woods and how there was witches and blah blah blah, and they had everyone fucking fooled. It was like kayfabe, it was like pro wrestling for me. I'm like, fool me, please. I like that. You know what I mean? Some people don't like to be fooled, but when it comes to entertainment, 100%. And I think for that very reason, you know, this movie still haunts me because of that particular time when I first watched it. And every time I watch it, it brings me back. I can watch it with an adult brain now, knowing that it's not going to hurt me. But at that time, like, whoa, this shit really happened. So it's only right that I give it 5, like with flying colors.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Greg, go on. This is what I'm waiting for.
I love that one, like, and that's my reason. You know, when people, you do those game shows, and those are my reasons.
As it says, I'll say it time and time again, there's a certain few movies that I say are almost perfect. Jaws is almost perfect. I'm always under the thing that Anaconda is an almost perfect movie up until you see the snake.
Yeah, you said
in terms of storytelling. And maybe Jennifer Lopez's acting because it's terrible.
I was about to say that's it, literally, yeah.
But
I like their
I like the story to it, the way it's done. This is almost perfect up until the dinner scene for me. I remember where I was. I was 14 when I first seen this. The 2003 one had just came out of the cinema, and I had bought it in London in a garage down from my nanny's house. I had to go back and get my uncle to come in and get it for me.
Yeah, you've a bit of that. For all of our listeners, Greg has a bit of geezer in him, isn't he? He's got a bit of geezer in him,
and I went down and they did. So I remember it was £7.99 for the 2003 one.
Good deal,
right? Or it was £8.99 for the original and the 2003 one. I was like, yeah, no brainer here. So I bought it and I went up and I watched the two of them one after another. And I was just sitting there going, wow. And then obviously the dinner scene happened and I was like, what? I was like, when the fuck did this turn into a zombie movie? But like that's the only downfall I have to this. Everything else is perfect. Like because of that downfall, I can't give it a 5. I will give it a 4.5 though.
That's fair.
You're taking a shaving of the meat off. Just a little shave.
Yeah. I mean, I need to make sandwiches for lunch tomorrow.
Good point, man. So do I.
But no, that's literally the only reason I won't give it a 5. Is because I hate that scene.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not even I hate that scene. I hate that one half a scene where he comes back to life.
Well, it obviously has something. I mean, the fact that it's so prevalent in your thought process on it is fair. You know what I mean? And it bothers you. And that's, look, at the end of the day, that's how movies are. You know what I mean? If there is that one little niggling thing where you're going, you just fucking piss me off on this one.
Yeah.
That's fair. That happens. You know?
And that's what makes great discussion on movies like what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, like I could have just said 4.5. Why? No rebuttal to it. But,
no.
Like that's the reason. For me, I've said it and used it. Everyone knows it. It's not a hidden fact. I've said it on a few shows.
Yeah.
You have to give reasons.
One scene.
You have to give reasons. I mean, because there's got to be context. As Eric Bischoff says, context is king. You know what I mean? And I think
cash was king.
Well, that is also king. Yeah, but context creates cash. So does controversy. Yeah. But I think we'll leave it there, lads. This has been a very, very good show, and I think
a great discussion. Yeah,
absolutely.
So now Carl's out of aces.
Oh no,
his two big ones are gone. No. Nosferatu has to be the next one.
That'll happen at some point. Don't worry.
Oh, that will happen. It will happen. It will get its own. It will get its own place on this. And
will we give our pick for the week then? Or would it only be right because of what it is to just say go and watch the new one?
I was thinking that. I was thinking the way we should, because our pick for the week should be this movie, because there's going to be so many youngins that will watch this, thinking it's the first of its kind. That won't.
The worst thing is now a lot of young horror fans won't watch this original one.
No,
because of the way it's done, and it's a shame, really.
Yeah.
That society has gone that way, that they don't want to watch an old film because it mightn't hold their attention.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Listen, yours truly is not that old of a man. Like, I'm not even in my 40s yet, and yet
close to it.
I watch it very, very close. Yeah, but that's still a young man, even if you're in your 40s. But the thing about it is, for me to watch like a show from 1966 in black and white, which is all I watch at the moment. Dark Shadows, which I've mentioned on this show, and there is a Dark Shadows cult following, so I'm working on possibly bringing that into this show at some point down the line. But for me to be able to watch shows like that, or for us to be able to talk about the old movies that we do, it just goes to show you that you should never ever be ignorant to what came before, you know. And I think that is the problem with today's society. We're not here to fix the world, but we're here to try and fucking at least tell them, if you're a horror fan, go back and watch what came before, because guess what? If you can put the phone down and turn it off for an hour or two, you might be surprised as to what you find, and you might be surprised that you may like it, you know?
Yeah.
It's
shock horror.
Yeah.
You might be surprised what your mind will allow you to imagine as well.
Yeah.
Oh, our minds haven't changed.
Filmmaking has changed for the worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, that's for another episode.
Don't get me wrong, there's great directors now that can make you go back that way. But a lot of films are just hashed together and was like, there you go.
Well, there's a reason they always go back to what came before, because it was better than what they have now, because most directors, most storytellers these days do not have the I won't say the brain capacity, because that would be ignorant and rude.
Creativity.
But yes, exactly. They don't have the creativity to expand their minds. Read a book. I would dare say anybody out there to listen to this show and that likes, has any kind of ambition to maybe write a story or write a possible horror or come up with a horror idea, read a book, but don't just read a modern book. Go back and actually read the originals. Read Dracula, read Frankenstein.
Exactly.
Read the old Stephen King movies. Read pretty much everything that you can. And guess what? That's where it all comes from. And on that note, we are going to tell you, by this time next week, we 100% will have our social media up and running. I know we said last week that we were working on it, but we will have a Twitter handle. We will have, we'll definitely have a Facebook, and we'll have an Instagram as well. So we know, obviously, Carol will give you the old Gmail there for anyone that wants to give us suggestions and stuff like that at the end. Carol?
otshorror@gmail.com.
And Carol is literally there to take your calls anytime, day or night.
I mean, if you can call through an email, you're doing well.
Oh, you can.
They can try.
You can. Google Hangouts is all through Gmail now.
That's true. Yeah.
So yes, you can. You old bastard, Greg. Even I know that.
Yeah.
You're slagging
I'm the youngest person here, and I feel the oldest.
And you didn't even know that. Google Hangouts. You can call people on Google now. Go figure. But yeah, until next week, make sure you do please share. The most important thing to do is subscribe to the channel, comment and let us know what you do, but make sure you subscribe and like the video. That's all we ask of you. Tell your friends about it, because we got a lot of big things coming up over the next couple of weeks.
He'll come after you if you don't.
He will.
Stay tuned.
Big things are coming. We have some big things coming over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to remember the loyal fans that have been with us from the get-go. And who knows, you might get a slab of meat. So until next week, Dynamo over and out.